This is part 2 of Rishi the movie. At the end of part 1, we listened to Patton West as she tried to convince me that she had nothing to do with the construction of Millennium Mind. It was all my idea, all my concepts, and she was abroad and I was just running away with it on my own. Nothing could be further than the truth, as will become apparent as we move forward into part 2. Let's start this part of the movie with some more of Patton West's lies.
Over all of these months, and I'm not through to the other side of it yet, is that it is being carefully unfolded. And the basis of Millennium Mind is a concept. More than anything else, it is a concept. It has to do with my writing, the transmissions of the archives of sacred manifestation. That is really primarily what it is about. So I have not done corporate consulting, even though it has been available to me quite abundantly, I might add. I have turned it down.
Well, I set forward on the basis that that was going to happen. At some point it changed, apparently.
In order to be true to the information that I've been asked to bring through. So what I anticipated, and I think probably what would have happened, is that I would have felt pushed to go into a more business direction than what I was ready for. And I don't know if you can feel that for me, I did feel pushed to go into immediate legalization and whatever else that you thought you were doing with the filing of the papers and all that, which frankly I didn't understand. I'd been in Europe for, I think, close to a month. I was in Israel for a month as well. I wasn't here.
I think...
So I'm trying to say that from your business...
We're moving away from what I consider to be truth, Devra.
I know that I felt pushed, John. And I know that although your vision was attractive to me, it was. It sounded good.
Devra, the idea...
It was not where I...
The idea that anyone else can run your show but you is laughable.
It is laughable.
It is laughable.
It is absolutely.
And the idea that I was going off at a tangent and doing something that you didn't like is also laughable.
Firstly, Patton West attempts to walk back the fact that Millennium Mind was a real entity, saying constantly that it was a concept. Of course, that's a lie, not least because immediately after constructively dismissing and defrauding me, she went on with the project. That's the benefit of looking back from 2026 to see what she did after this conversation with me. Another aspect to notice is that in the original video, part 1 of the movie, Patton West starts the conversation with me in a very low-key way, feminine, submissive almost, let's get this sorted out, and blah, blah, blah. Now, as we get into part 2 of the movie, you can see that the ogre is beginning to show itself. Every time I try to make a point or rebut some of her lies, she talks over me. That's what she does all the time to everybody. The other big lies Patton told in that brief snippet was that she was abroad in Europe for a month and abroad in Israel for a month. That's not true. She did go to Europe to do an SAI, which lasts 4 or 5 days. And she did briefly go to Israel, maybe a week, 4 or 5 days, I'm not sure. But the idea that I was left alone and this was all my idea is just utter lies. Even from abroad, she's monitoring what's happening in her ashram several times a day. Patton West is a control freak, and she actually admitted that while talking to me. That will come up later in the video. I'm going to quickly play a clip, an excerpt from my discussions with Patton West, which will appear later in the video, but I'm going to insert that clip here now just to make this point.
For two reasons. One, we had so many meetings, almost daily. The other thing is that you don't allow anyone to go off and do anything on their own. That you are the ultimate control freak.
Absolute control freak, John.
Yeah.
And I continue my affairs exactly along those lines.
There we are, bingo, in that one little mini rant by Devra Patton West. All the lies that you've heard up until now about her being away and all of that, she's just swept all of that away by admitting she's a control freak and she's always going to be a control freak. Bingo. To show how much of a control freak, I'm going to put two documents up on the screen. Both are basically protocol to be followed when in the presence of, as she was then calling herself, Soraya Ma. In the first document, I've posted some notes to the left of it just to bring to your attention the huge lies and bullshit in this propaganda. In the second document, down the bottom, it states that everybody working around her must sign a non-disclosure agreement. Well, you're beginning to see why.
What I'm trying to explain.
I set up the non-profits at your request. I set up the for-profits at your request.
We know all that.
But you're saying it was my vision.
Do you feel as though there's any place at all, any intention, any hope for this conversation to go anywhere other than a continuation of being on opposite sides of the boxing ring? Is that really what you want?
No, what I want is to be paid for the 5 or 6 months of my life that I gave up working towards an end that I thought was going to materialize, which vanished at the end. I just want to be remunerated for my time. That is it.
So if I'm on a court stand,
yes,
there will be a lot that I will unfold. A lot.
Good.
And so what I'm also going to say is that as you got on the saddle and started proceeding on what you thought was the plan, I was largely physically not here at all. And when I finally did get done with SAI, because I got back June 4th, I headed straight into SAI. As soon as I finished SAI, that is when I really had a moment to catch my breath and focus on Millennium Mind at all. Before then, it was barely a solid reality in my world. And even now, the focus is on the transmissions. That's where the focus had to stay for me, the creator. So I would have been unable, under any circumstances, to go in the direction that you were perceiving was the agreed upon perception. And I'm wondering if...
I have 60 or 70 documents at my lawyer's, Devra, over 5 months of time, showing that I was following your lead. The shareholder agreement, you attended the meeting with John Grief, it was drawn up, it exists. I have a note from Tamaya saying the shareholding exists.
That all of this is about money for you. That all you want is your money.
I want to be paid for the time that I work. That's it. That's the end.
You just want to be paid.
That's it. That's
Even though there was no agreement, nothing in writing, nothing.
Oh, there were agreements, Devra, between you and I, but they turned out not to be worth anything.
That's right. They turned out not to be worth anything at all.
Bingo again. Patton West just admitted that her agreements are worthless. Of course, she didn't know she was being recorded. That's why she was so honest. It's not a word I would associate with her, but there we are. What we've all just heard is more lies from the master liar herself. Previously, she said she was away in Europe for a month and doing Israel for a month as well. Now, in this section, she says she's been away for 5 months, and then she comes back at the end of June. I started work in January, and it was all a surprise to her. I mean, it's just amazing. And now we're getting into the threats. The tone is beginning to change now. If I go to court, everything will be revealed. Well, fantastic. That's just what I want. Since I have nothing to be revealed that could be used to intimidate me, that shot went wide of the mark. What I did not realize at the time was this. As soon as our meeting was over and Patton West stormed out, having not got her way with charm, with threats, etc., she went straight back to her compound and gathered all of her employees and students together and demanded that they make false statements about me and my behavior during my 6 months tenure with Patton West. Anybody still think this idiot is a guru? Okay, you just heard it from the master manipulator, master liar's own lips. Her agreements are worthless. Now let's move on and dissect the rest of the meeting, which occurred in March 2003.
Now, I have a history of doing what I say and keeping my word. And I have a history of acting from integrity.
You have a history of being a corporate raider, John. Of buying vulnerable companies and turning them over in a year or two and making money.
You don't have any idea about my past.
I don't.
I never used the word corporate raider.
But that is what it was. And I feel that you're doing the same thing now. You're trying to twist it to fit your ends.
Devra, let the court decide. We can argue this from kingdom come. We're never going to agree.
Again, I'm not sure whether this woman is criminally insane or just incredibly evil. I guess it's possible she's both at the same time. But it's amazing that she can use phrases like, I'm a corporate raider and I'm using those techniques against her now, when all the evidence, documentary evidence, verbal evidence from witnesses, both students and employees, show that Patton West guided this process all the way through. Basically, she has her own fiefdom and everybody does as she says, or there's trouble. So the idea that I was working for 6 months just off on my own, doing my own stuff, is absolutely ridiculous. But that is exactly what she's trying to persuade everybody that happened. In other words, again, she is portraying her crimes onto the victim, which in this case is me. And there are many, many other victims she's done exactly the same thing to. But I'm not putting up with it. Let's now dissect some more of her lies. Again, the problem with liars is they can't remember all of their lies, so they contradict themselves. You just heard Patton West describe me as a corporate raider. I've never been a corporate raider. I've been a financial advisor for 25 years, and I owned a single company that employed 500 people. That's the extent of my corporate activities. However, in court on the 12th of July 2007, Patton West described me as working for a tabloid newspaper in London. Again, she just pulls these lies out of her head and expects everybody to believe them. And of course, the members of her cult do believe them, because not to believe them and to question the truth has very bad outcomes for anybody involved in Patton West's cult. Even me obliquely telling the truth, I've been subject to 2 murder attempts and a 19-year campaign of intimidation. This is how this world server works. On the screen now are two documents. The first one on the left is an excerpt from a court custody case held on the 12th of July 2007. I want to comment on two parts of that excerpt from the transcript. The first thing I'd like to comment about is Patton West's assertion that I was a tabloid reporter working in London, blah, blah, blah. This is a complete lie. I mean, you've just heard her earlier on saying I was a corporate raider. I mean, make your mind up, bitch. I mean, there's so many bloody lies. The second part of this transcript I want to comment on is that the counsellor refers to my website and the statements on my website from employees who were brutalised, robbed, defrauded, the subject of extortion, etc., etc. Patton West's response to that is that those employees are fictitious and fabricated. In other words, she's saying they don't exist. I made up all those names. The second document on the screen is a list of those employees I got from the company. Many of those employees I knew and worked with. Let's move on to another big lie. In court, Patton West describes herself as owning a business that is a multi-billion-dollar affair. Multi-billion-dollar affair. I'm saying that twice and emphasizing it. Now, she said that on the 12th of July, 2007. On August 9th, I think, or shortly afterwards, certainly in August, she was interviewed by the Big Fork Eagle newspaper, in which she made a number of statements, all of them untrue, but it transpired that not only was Patton West not the owner of a multi-billion-dollar business, but that in fact she was heavily in debt and had a lien of $2,400 against her for unpaid employment insurance. Again, what I didn't understand coming from the UK was how somebody who is obviously a career criminal can keep appearing in court and telling lies and not be challenged about that or arrested for perjuring herself. On October 9th, 2009, Patton West was deposed by my lawyer. And during the questioning, the following comments were made by Patton West. Up on the screen now is an excerpt from the transcript of that meeting. Top left, Patton West was asked if she filed taxes for 2008. She says, I don't know. She says, I've been under extreme financial hardship and duress. I would imagine that is why he may not have filed yet. Again, it's her taxes, but if it hasn't happened, it's somebody else's fault, not her fault, even though it's obviously her responsibility. Moving on, top right of that sheet, Patton West says that she estimates she's about $2 million in debt in all. That is quite a change in 12 months from when she was in court saying she was the owner of a business that was a multi-billion-dollar affair and that she made large charitable donations each year. Again, the problem with liars, especially pathological liars like Patton West, they can never, ever remember all their lies. Finally, bottom right, the question is asked, did you ever borrow $30,000 from your father, Patton West's father? She answers no. Again, another complete lie. During my lawsuit, Patton West's stepmother, Carol Patton, married to Patton West's father, wrote a letter to my lawyer asking if my lawyer could help recover the $30,000 that Patton West borrowed from her father. Her father had passed, which was why Carol Patton was asking for the money back.
Yeah. Well, for whatever reason, it's not going to do me any good. I just didn't understand the debtor's court. My thought was, okay, she got the $30,000. She has to prove that she bought the land, or I get my money back. Basically, that's what you can tell your attorney. Basically, that's what I was hoping.
You just heard from Carol Patton, Patton West's stepmother, who, along with her departed father, had loaned $30,000 to Patton West to buy land with. Patton West is an equal opportunity thief, fraudster. Nobody is safe. Relatives, friends, anybody who comes into contact with her is a potential victim. While behind the scenes, Patton West has been lying to her cult, lying in court, lying when being deposed. Here's some of the images that were being posted on a website about me. In other words, the big propaganda push to demonize me, the victim, while she carries on looking for more victims. This has been going on for 33 years. Again, I go back to the statement I made earlier. Is Patton West criminally insane or just insanely criminal? The image on the screen at the moment, look to the bottom left, the blue type, where she says, Watson's perverse use of the internet as a stage for his profanity of greed and self-aggrandizement. It's Patton West who's using the internet, promising enlightenment for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Her website's full of lies. It's obvious they're lies. It's easy to prove they're lies. And yet, here she is portraying me as using the internet for my own greed and self-aggrandizement. I'm not the one saying I'm the mother of 10,000 sons. I'm not the other one making these idiotic statements like she's been preparing to guide humanity for thousands of years. I mean, she's the one that's doing the abuse, the self-aggrandizement, and using the internet for fraud, for money laundering, for organized crime, for racketeering. And yet here she is, projecting her crimes onto me, or at least attempting to do just that. There's a lot more to unpack, and I suggest if you're going to continue listening to this, you get some earplugs because it's going to get quite profane, but not on my part, on Patton West's part. Look, I've more than made the case that Patton West is either criminally insane or a very, very evil criminal entity, whatever. There's another half an hour of banter backwards and forwards between myself and Patton West as she batters away, trying to get me to accept her lies as my truth, which was never going to happen. So what we're going to do from now onwards in this movie is to play some highlights from the discussion with myself. And I'm doing this so that anybody looking at this movie will know what Patton West really is behind the fancy dress outfit she wears and the lies she spews. Enjoy.
I remember having a conversation with you in your lounge of the lodge where we're talking about pay. And you said that you had a greater need for it at the moment initially. And I said, that's not an issue, it's not a problem. And you said you felt that I was going to be having a salary of between 50 and 60,000 a year. That was discussed. It wasn't my imagination. Yeah.
If I was standing on a court of law, I would say yes.
Yeah.
That was discussed.
Okay. The other thing that was discussed freely amongst the three of us was a shareholding, and that came into fruition in the form of a draft contract, which exists.
Yes, we know that was all discussed.
So we don't have to argue about this. We can get a third party to look at it from a distance to see whether these things were discussed, whether they exist or not.
They were discussed. I agree. They were discussed. So do you want to
There is
sue me for that?
circumstance. I want payment for the 5 or 6 months' time I put into your organization. That is all.
I'm probably not going to be allowed to do that. I'm just letting you know, John, that it's probably not likely that I'm going to fill out a check for $50,000 and just hand it to you.
In the preceding clip, you just heard Patton West admit that I was telling the truth, that we did have agreements, pay and shares were discussed, and at the end, she says, but she's not going to just write out a check for $50,000 for what she owes me. Now, this conversation took place in 2003, March. It is now 2026. There have been 2 attempts on my life by this woman and 19 years of intimidation. And still, no criminal trial into any of her activities, as far as I know, at the time of making this video.
Because I've watched you treat other people, sometimes in a very, very bad way. You dispose of them like Kleenex.
That's right.
You treat them terribly.
I've disposed of a lot of people of late. It's true.
If you have not learned anything about me, learn this. You will not do that with me.
So, I'm not going to take this laying down. If you want to sue, we'll go so fucking down and dirty. Huge expenses, John, and it isn't going to come out of my pocket.
True to her word, Patton West got down and dirty. As mentioned previously, so far it's 19 years of intimidation, let's leave it at that at the moment. Terrorist attacks is the way I look at it, and 2 attempts on my life. Now you understand a lot more about Patton West and what she's really like, but up on the screen going forward, you'll see the 4 individuals who were senior members of a cult criminal racketeering gang and are therefore jointly liable for her actions. They were the people that funded Patton West's criminal activities in 3 US states. They were the people that marketed her to the public as a harmless guru. And they were the people that issued threats when necessary against myself and many others. And I'll put some of those threats up on the screen as we listen to Patton West losing her rag. But before we do that, I want to introduce Dr. Julio Williams, MD, a senior member of Patton West's cult for 20 years, and after Corin Coffin, one of the largest funders of her criminal organization. Now, you just heard a few moments ago Patton West say it will cost a lot if we go to law and it won't be coming out of her pocket. That was one of the truthful statements she made. There weren't many, but that was another one. And so it turned out, as Julio Williams pledged $2 million to fund her legal fees so that she could outspend her victims in court.
As things have gone down the road, which I was in a very unstable, fucked up, stressed out place for most of the time that I was in your presence. So the fact that I had to move through a certain period of instability, a certain period of sorting out, and when you come back to your principle that how dare you cast me off, or Nora or whoever, what I'm saying is that I had to define what my life was going to be about for myself. And you are absolutely correct. I am not willing to partner in my immediate effect of creation with anyone. Because I feel stabbed in the back by you, John. I feel literally stabbed in the heart, stabbed in the back. I feel fucked up the ass. I feel so fucked over by you.
Listen,
I'm not going to take this laying down. If you want to sue, let's go so fucking down and dirty. Huge expenses, John. And it isn't going to come out of my pocket. It will come out of yours. That all you want is your money.
I want to be paid for the time that I work. That's it. That's the end.
You want to be paid.
That's it.
Even though there was no agreement, nothing in writing, nothing.
Oh, there were agreements, Deborah, between you and I, but they turned out not to be worth anything.
That's right. They turned out not to be worth anything at all.
Now, I have a history of doing what I say and keeping my word. And I have a history of acting from integrity.
Do you really feel that it's worth it to you to invest in a court battle no matter what it's going to cost? Because it's going to cost far more than $50,000 that you're even asking.
You don't allow anyone to go off and do anything on their own. That you are the ultimate control freak.
Absolute control freak, John. Yeah. And I continue my affairs exactly along those lines.
As you did with Millennium Mind until you change your mind.
I am going to continue to be the sole person, no one else.
Bingo. Yet again, Patton West makes it very clear that there were never going to be any other partners. And the Millennium Mind delusion was just something she thought up to keep me on board for a few months, during which time she hoped to brainwash and condition me like she has the other members of her cult and take over my life, destroy my marriage and suck out my wealth. That was never going to happen. So there we have it. Throughout this video, she's admitted defrauding me on many occasions, and this is just another one. But the balls of it, she's been getting away with it for, over 3 decades now. So she just assumes that everybody's going to roll over rather than oppose her. Clearly, we need a criminal investigation into 3 decades of racketeering, thousands of acts of terrorism on the part of Patton West against scores of victims, and 5 to 7 murders. But more than that, what I want to know is, at the appeal court hearing, how did Patton West's lawyer persuade the judge not to listen to any of that evidence? Clearly, it was a mistrial. I have no idea why the judge refused to listen or view the evidence pertinent to the case.
It doesn't matter what is actually true.
So far in this movie, you've heard Patton West start off using charm, then her delivery got more tense, then it got threatening, and when that didn't work, if you sue me, I'll get so fucking down and dirty, huge expenses coming out of your pocket, not mine. Well, that didn't work either, so Patton West moved to the last ploy, which is hysteria. So listen to the self-appointed planetary regent, the mother of 10,000 sons, the person who says she's been preparing to guide humanity for thousands of years. Listen to what this creature sounds like when she doesn't get her own way. While you listen to Miss West give her Academy-worthy performance, I'll put some more images up on the screen showing how the senior members of her cult have helped keep her out of jail, fund her, lie for her, market her to the public as a well-meaning guru, which is the last thing Patton West is. This isn't about world service. This is about service of the world to Patton West. Enjoy.
I thought, and I believed, that you would get the same information that you would back off of me. I believed that you would get the same information and that we would be on the same page, and then you could make your decision whether or not this fit what you really wanted to do with your life, because I kept saying the transmissions are what this is. It's my life. It's what I promised to do.
Again, Patton West never addresses the real issue. The real issue being she took me on as a business partner, a co-director in Millennium Mine, promised me a wage, promised me shareholding when I'd completed the work, discarded me after I'd finished the work, and just assumed that I would walk away empty-handed, like 95% of all of her victims have done in the past. Her Oscar-winning performance continues.
And I hope that maybe you could go along with that, but I also knew that maybe you couldn't. It just wasn't what you wanted. And I don't think it is. I don't think you would have had the patience. I don't think that's what you wanted to do.
Devra, I hear you now trying to fit all the pieces of the puzzle together to tell your story.
It is my story, John. It matters to me.
But
my story matters to me. Shouldn't it matter somewhere in this conversation? Shouldn't it matter somewhere in this reality? Doesn't it count for anything? What was going on in my life with the whole thing that I was struggling with, doesn't it matter?
Here we have another example of the master manipulator at work. Her wailing and crying and upset is because I'm not accepting that she has a point of view. That's what she's saying. When if you listen throughout this conversation, you hear her talking over me, interrupting me, telling lies, non-stop lies, and expecting me to just give way to her point of view. So once again, what the psychopath is doing is projecting her crimes onto me. She's accusing me of not listening to her point of view when that's exactly what she's been doing to me throughout this conversation. Let's continue. And as we do, I'll put up some images on the screen from the senior members of her cult and how they have helped her stay out of jail.
Doesn't it matter anywhere? Because I feel like you are taking my vulnerability and you are shoving me up the ass with it, and you are pretending that you've got some goddamn principle while you're doing it, and I'm saying it's not true for me. And there's a hell of a lot of other people who don't think it's true either. That is the truth. You are fucking over a spiritual teacher, for Christ's sake. Doesn't that mean anything? I have not had an easy time doing this thing that has never been done before. And I can barely even hold my own in groups of people who are trying to get the same thing, and they are barely holding their own too. This is a very difficult thing that we are bringing through, and it may not have any fruition for 200 or 300 years, John. It may have none.
Devra, all I see
The direction that people are going in is so pathetic on this planet, and it breaks my heart. For us to go in this direction as blindly and foolishly as all the other polarized people on the planet, what can possibly? It's like that. It makes me feel as though that there's no hope. That was all the good intentions that we began. If this is the direction that it has to go with, I do not agree with the truth of your principle. And I do not feel that you're listening to me as to what actually was taking place.
Devra,
because what is more important? Your world?
Devra, all I can do is fucking listen to you because all you do is talk. All you do is talk. You don't listen at all. Now, all you're doing is bullying me. Now you're using your emotions. So I really don't think there's any point in taking this meeting any further. Before you go, Devra, would you agree that I did do some work with you for 5 months? Why not just make me an offer for the time I worked for you?
This will be the last posting in part 2 of the movie. I anticipate there'll be 4 parts to this movie. Part 3 will basically be showing all the crimes Patton West has been charged with, convicted with, and more of her senior cult members. The 4th video is likely to be focusing on her weapon, her occult weapon, the weapon that has allowed her to become a terrorist, the most prolific terrorist probably in US history, targeting scores or hundreds of victims with terrorist attacks to rob them, defraud them, extort from them, and if they go public, to injure them, intimidate them, or even murder them. As I have said throughout this movie, I have been subject to at least 2 murder attempts, probably 3 when I was pushed out of my body briefly. And the intimidation is ongoing, daily, nightly, 24/7. And this is why there have been no criminal investigations into Patton West, because her victims, witnesses back off once they start being attacked and feel they're in danger of being murdered. Murder is literally just a cost of doing business to Patton West. She has an occult hidden weapon which she uses to terrorize her victims, and has done so for 30 years. According to Jack West and myself, we are looking at perhaps 5 to 7 murders. And on the screen now, you'll see a picture of Pat Cole. Now, Pat Cole's been a long-time member of Patton West cult, going way back into New Mexico, and basically, Cole committed 66% of her wealth to Patton West's good causes. Her luxurious lifestyle being the only good cause there is for Patton West. When Dr. Cole didn't hand over the money fast enough, she was repeatedly, viciously assaulted, at one stage being hit on the head repeatedly by the heel of Patton West's shoe, and then an employee, Carlida Finch as it happens, overheard Patton West planning Cole's murder. That dialogue is up on the screen now. This should be investigated urgently. This is a serial killing psychopath on the loose, still. It's high time the authorities got their head around this and did something about it. The law is an ass when it allows somebody like Patton West to operate freely for 3 decades. And when things get tough, she just packs up and moves to the next Western state where they don't understand white-collar crime or don't have the resources to prosecute it. That's about to change.